I'm just setting the YouTube live on. Okay. I'm just setting the YouTube live on. Okay, thank you everybody for joining in. So, Assalamu alaikum. And today we are here. We are going to talk about for writing for research proposal. Thank you everyone who has joined us so far. Or we will start now. So, the topic for today is exploring why do we write research proposal, and when do we write and what is it? How do we write research proposal? So I think first of all, we do need to understand as to what research proposal is. So we are going to talk about that. What we will do throughout the session is that we will have a little bit of discussion of what research proposals are, and then another very important question that people often ask is about how do we actually develop research question. So there are quite a lot of issues that people face when it comes to writing research proposal and its various components. Understanding why do we do that, how do we do that, and when do we do that. So research proposal, so we are going to explore all of these things in today's talk. So we have Professor Rubina Zakar, and we also have got Dr. Dildar Muhammad. So what's going to happen that I'll start off, and then Dr. Dildar is going to talk about what is research question, and then Professor Rubina is going to talk about the components of research proposal and how do we develop research proposal. And after that, we can have a question and answer. So in the meantime, if you have got any questions, you can put it in the chat box, or you can keep a note of it, and we'll be able to answer that as we finish. Please keep your microphones off during the discussion, so there is less disturbances. And as I say, you can keep a note of your questions if you have, and we will take that once the presentations have finished. And yeah, that's it really. So we are going to use examples from various different disciplines that we as researchers, or we as Professor myself, Dildar, and Professor Rubina have worked. Having said that, writing research proposal is a very similar sort of task. So it doesn't really matter which discipline you're working from or which discipline you're writing research proposal in. So I think the information that you get is going to be relevant to all of you, regardless of your discipline and regardless of your field of study. So, and I will keep an eye on the chat box. So if you have got any questions, please do tell us. The recording will be available on YouTube afterwards, and it is live at the moment on YouTube too. So if any of you have got concerns about not wanting to show your face, you can please keep your videos. You can off your camera, but if that's okay, please stay on. So what is research proposal? Well, I think one of the questions that is often asked, or people often think that this is only relates to writing when you're doing your studies, but that's not true. Research proposal is basically your plan of research that you want to give it to somebody to get some funding or to get some kind of support, and or any support that you're looking for, be it's in terms of financial support, be in terms of permission to conduct the research, for example through ethics committee, or any of those different aspects. So you may be writing for very different audiences. You may also be writing one research proposal, but it's various different variations for very different audience, depending on what their role is and what is it that you want to do. So what is it basically? It is a document in which what you want to do is you tell the reader what is it that you're intending to do, why you want to do it, do you have the capacity to do it, do you have the ability to do it, have you thought through the consequences and everything else that goes on, And do you know how you are going to manage risk or any other problems that may come along the way? So it is a little bit like, if I just relate it to the real life example, it is like, for example, marriage proposal, let's say. So what you do is you look at various different aspects of the families, of the bride, of the groom, why you're doing it, would it be financially viable, and all the rest of this stuff. Initial thing is like finding a bride, and having the, so that's more or less like having a research question, that where you're going and who your bride is, and which family you're talking about. I know it's a little bit lay example, but perhaps that will allow you to understand the concept better. And once you decide that, and then you're planning marriage or afterwards, so you have to think through whole of those steps. Who are you going to invite? How are you going to invite them? Where are you going to do what? How much money is needed? What is the dateline? What time? So there are so many things that you can think of when going through those steps. So research proposal essentially is the same thing. It doesn't matter if you write it for your master's study, it doesn't matter if you write it your PhD study, and it doesn't matter if you write it for otherwise for some funding bodies. The only difference could be that when you're writing it for masters, or when you're writing it for your PhD, you're writing it for your supervisors and other people around you. And that does mean that they can be a little bit more kinder to you. They can help you develop it. But when you're writing it, a grant for the funding bodies, they're not going to be that nice to you, depending on the topic. So that's the whole thing that we are going to talk about today. Um, so my first speaker would be Dr. Dildar, who is going to talk about how do we develop research question, and where does research question come from. This is the first step of writing a research proposal, because if you don't know where are you going, you cannot plan your journey, can you? So if you have planned a holiday or something, you need to know where is it that you're going to go. So research question in similar way is just, it's that thing where you want to understand what is it that you want to do, and where are you going with it. And anything afterwards, in terms of components, in terms of design, in terms of everything else, follows the research question once you have developed that. And most people struggle either with developing a research question, or what they do is they think about other elements first and then come back to research question. So hopefully Dildar is going to have a look at that. Dr. Dildar work at Khyber Medical University. He's a director of Institute of Nursing. And I will let Dildar introduce himself a little bit more, and give a little bit more information as to his role, and to have the to start the discussion. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Parveen. So, as Dr. Parveen told you, my name is Dr. Dildar Mohammed, and I'm currently assistant professor of nursing at Khyber Medical University, and I'm also director of Institute of Nursing Sciences. And as earlier discussed by Dr. Parveen, like what is research proposal and why is it important? So we will just build on that, and it's like pretty much. It's a pretty much good idea that any research proposal from whatever background you belong, where social sciences or health sciences or nursing or so the process is pretty much same and similar, so it is relevant to anyone and everyone. So I will talk on how to develop a good research question. Good research question is actually the backbone of any research process. So if you are able to develop a good research question, it means you are able to, your research process will be pretty much systematic, and you will be able to generate later on a good research thesis for your master or for your PhD. So it is very critical that you have a good research question, right? So now let us define what do we mean when we say a good research question. First thing is it shall not be too broad or it shall not be too narrow, right? We will discuss like what do we mean when we say too broad. Too broad research question is usually very vague, unclear, and it's nobody is or it's very difficult to understand the broad question, right? Too narrow is too specific, like you are not able to encompass or measure or explore the area that you want to explore. So it shall not be, ideally it shall not be too broad, it shall not be too focused. So the characteristics of a good research question is it details the problem statement, like what is the area that you want to explore. It further describes the issues in that particular area, right? and it focuses the problem statement. It guides your data collection and analysis process. Like, it definitely tells you, or one can a researcher can guess that what will be the research design or the methodology, and what will be what kind of participants, what kind of sampling strategy will be used in that research. It sets the context of the research. So, these are some of the characteristics of a good research question: not too broad, not too narrow. It shall be like, it sets the context for research. It guides the research. It tells you about the data collection and analysis process, and it focuses the problem statement. Now there are different criterias or different formulas that people use for generating a good research question, right? And so like, one of the criteria that I'm going to talk about is, there is like, 5 6 components. So you can say finer, FINER, right? One of the criteria, or one of the proposed rubric that people use to develop a research question is FINER, finer. So there are like finer in finer means the research question shall be feasible. First thing of any research question is, and the first important and critical step of any research question is, that it shall be feasible. Now, when we say feasible, what do we mean? Feasibility is like, in terms of, first important thing in feasibility is availability of funds or money. Do you have enough funds or enough money to explore that research question or not? That is very important. Second thing is, do you have enough time? For example, if you are proposing a research question for a PhD, you shall be able to complete your work within 4 years or maximum 5 years. 3 to 5 years is the maximum time. Do you have enough time? Are you proposing a research question which is you are able to complete your research within 5 years, or for a master thesis within 2 years? So the second important thing is time, availability of time. Do you have enough time or not? Third important thing in feasibility. So these are the components of feasibility. One, do you have enough funds? Second, do you have enough time? Number third is, do you have enough expertise? For example, if you are proposing a research question and your biostat or your statistics are very weak, and you are proposing an like, a descriptive question, you shall be able to complete your research within 2 years or maximum 5 years. So these are the components of feasibility. Now,
Have we lost Dildar?
your primary area, you are proposing a research question from biological sciences, microbiology. So do you have enough expertise of microbiology? If you are proposing a research question in social sciences or in health sciences, so it must be that you must have basic expertise in that area. So these are the components of feasibility. Now, or
I
do you
think
have whatever, like, so is it feasible or not? First thing is feasibility. Number second thing is interesting. Finer, I said to you, like, we have got a criteria. The criteria that I'm discussing is finer. Is it feasible? So components of feasibility we discussed. The second thing is interesting. Do you have enough interest in that area? Because you have to live with that topic for another 2 years or 4 years. Or usually what people do is, like, the PhD research question, what they do is they take it further on. Like, even when you finish your PhD, you tend to work in that area. So is it interesting or not? Like, so the third thing is, and which is very highly critical for a PhD thesis, is novelty or novel. Is it novel? Is it original or not? What people do, or what students tend to do, especially master students, like, they see a lot of other proposals and research and published articles, and they tend to like,
Dildar. Can we hear Dildar?
No.
Okay.
Connection
So
lost.
so no problem. We will recap the information anyway. Just bear with us. Technology, when it works fine. When it doesn't, it can create problems. I think we have lost him. Let me check. Yeah. Okay. So I think we've lost Dildar, so hopefully he will join back in. Sorry about that. So I think he has managed to cover quite a lot of issues around developing research question and what is it that you need to think about when you're developing research question, and other aspects we will be able to cover once we start talking about when we start taking your questions, and we'll be able to take it from there. So now I would like to ask Professor Rubina Zakir to talk about components of research proposal, because research question is the first step and it should always be the first step. So you should never sort of think of anything else before thinking about your research question. So while all the points that Dildar discussed and pointed out are really important, but even bigger point is that first of all, you need to know which direction you're going, which research question you want to do it, and then think of all the practicalities that he talked about when you are specifying the question. So once you have done that, the next bit is how do you actually write all those things? How do you actually plan all those things in a coherent way that other people are able to understand what you want to do? One of the problem which people usually have is that they think I know and I have thought of everything, and therefore even if I write in whatever ways, it would be very clear to other people. It's usually is not. It is clearer to you because you have think through this and it is clear in your mind, but other people may not be able to understand this. So we are going to talk about all those aspects. Professor Rubina, over to you. Please do introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about you. I would start off that Professor Rubina is based at Punjab University, and she is director of Institute of Social Sciences. It is Rubina?
Social and Cultural Studies.
Social and Cultural Studies. Please do tell us a little bit more about yourself, and then over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Praveen.
Excuse me, Dr. Praveen, can I ask a question regarding the research question, or is it finished? The
We will do it later on. We'll finish the talks and then we will take the questions. Write your question, keep your questions with you. We will cover all the questions, but let's go through the talk first, and then we can take the questions. Okay? And please, everybody, mute yourself.
Okay, thank you, Praveen. So I'm Rubina Zakir. I'm professor of public health at Institute of Social and Culture Studies at Punjab University. And we have two programs of PhD. One is in sociology and the other is in public health. So I have a lot of experiences of reading so many synopses of my students. So I will tell you a little bit about what are the different mistakes which are sometimes students they are doing. And so I will talk, but first I will talk about the components of research proposal. So because some of the students, they asked to share the screen. So I am sharing my screen. Praveen, can you allow me to share my screen? Okay. I think you all can see the screen now. So I will talk about components, but first, as already told by Praveen, I just want to repeat again that what is research proposal? The research proposal aims to present your ideas, because students, they have a lot of ideas and they want to share it, but we always say that you have to share in the form of in writing. So what you want to do it, because most of the time students, they share their ideas and they tell us a lot of things that they want to do this, but the proposal is actually this is your ideas, what you want to do, your expected question, your proposed questions, your expected outcomes, and you clearly define it and in writing that what you want to do. So this is proposal. So it seeks to make a case for the reason your questions, and you want to see that what you want to do, and it's you always give the answer that what, why, and how you will do it. So then you write your proposal. So when you are writing proposal, successful PhD research proposal, it requires a lot of preparation, a lot of planning, critical thinking, and above all, your dedication. Because if you are dedicated, then you can write your research proposal within 6 months. But if you're not dedicated to your studies, or sometime you are busy in your job, so I have experienced that many of the students, they do not write proposal even after getting admission, after 2 years getting admission, because in all other Western countries, it's very common that the first step to enter into PhD program is to write your synopsis or a proposal. But in Pakistan, this is the practice that first you take the admission, and then you complete your coursework, and after 1 year, you start to write your proposal. So that's why it takes a lot of time. So, but I think all the students, they have to prepare it well before taking admission. Especially in Pakistan. So you have to think critically that what you want to do it. So the research proposal, but because this is the very common question that student, they ask, that how long it should be. So your research proposal, it should be around 2,000 to 3,000 words. And it create a outline that how you will engage your instructor and gather the feedback, because most of the time student, they continue writing their proposal and they do not take sitting with the supervisor, and at the end they show the proposal, oh, I am ready with the proposal. So I think this is not the good idea. You have to take the comments of your instructor or your supervisor at every step. And it is very important that you prepare a layout of a testable, adaptable model for your dissertation. That what are the different components, you discuss it well before planning your writing research proposal. And you develop the ideas that will make it into the final product. Because if you develop the idea and then you change it after 6 months of work, and then because this is I have seen that many students, they first they start writing on one project and work on it for 6 months and sometimes 1 year, and then afterward they change the idea. So it is very, very important that you first you give some time to your idea, and then think about it, what you want to work. And then afterward you can say that this is my idea and you want to work. So planning to write proposal. Consider the organization of your PhD proposal writing process before you actually start writing. Yeah, because this is the first step, that you planning to write your proposal, but how you will do it, how will you plan it. So the plan the flow of your writing. Though, for example, because I'm telling you the different components of the proposal, but it is not necessary that you will follow the same sequence of these components. So you can plan that what is the first thing you will write. what is the first step you will follow. So this is up to you. So how you have to do it, like, so that's why I'm saying that you have to plan it, that how you will write it. So you should be very much clear about the roadmap or roadmap of your proposal writing, and work out any visual you would like to include, and you will explain your methodology. You should have some idea in your mind that what you are going to do, like, because many of the students, they always ask, oh, I am
Rubina, you're mute.
not do it. How I am mute because I did not do it.
I muted everybody, so I think it muted you as well. Sorry about that.
Okay. But I don't know that how much they have missed.
No, it was just past one half minute, basically.
Okay. So when you plan to write PhD proposal, you should have some roadmap, and you have to work out that what kind of visual you want to include in your proposal, and explain your methodology, because this is the most commonly asked question, that student, they decide about the methodology before deciding their topic, and they say, oh, I want to do qualitative study, or I want to do quantitative study. But this is not the right, because you have to decide about your methodology according to your questions, according to your study objectives. So you can't decide before deciding about your objectives and your questions to tell about the methodology. And you can think about the data, what kind of data you can use. Maybe you are going to use secondary data, from where you will get this data, because a lot of work is going on COVID nowadays. So many of the students, they are clear that they want to do on epidemiological modeling, or many topics related to this, but they should be very clear that how they will get this data, and if they are interested to do epidemiological modeling, what kind of data they need, and if the data is available. So postulate possible outcomes of reviewing the data, and then after this you can start writing about introduction and abstract, because abstract you can't write before, because I have experienced that some of the students, they start writing abstract before writing even introduction, because abstract is the last part which you write after developing your proposal. And bibliography, definitely you have to take care of bibliography as well. So my computer is done. I have to check what's wrong. I need to share it again. Okay. So can you see it? So after creating your PhD proposal plan, because first you have to develop the plan, that how you will write your proposal, yeah? And then after creating your plan, you will start actually writing the writing process. And in this figure, because I have read many universities' criteria of writing proposal, and I found some good diagrams, and so I thought that I should share this with you. So here you can see that what are the different components you have to take care when you are writing your proposal. The title page, because this is very, very important, that what will be the title of your research. And here I just tell you the different components, and then I will talk about these components in detail. So title of your research and the title page, what kind of information you have to provide on your title page. It depends on in which university and you are writing this proposal, and what are the requirements of your doctoral program. So And then one of the components is abstract, because in the abstract you have to provide the concise notion of the studies and to give the information to reader that what are the objectives and methodology, expected outcome of your research, and then what are the research problems, and what are the research questions, why this is important to work on this topic, and what is the significance of your research, and what is the relevance of this topic to the field in which you are doing your PhD. Because if you are doing in sociology, then you have to provide the sociological relevance of your topic, and if you are doing in public health, you have to give the public health relevance of your topic with relation to your field. And literature review, because the literature review part is very, very, very much important. And I have seen that many of the students, they do mistake in this part, because how they have to write literature review, this is very, very important, because most of the time the student, they just only take the abstract and then they explain the abstract in the literature review chapter, and which is totally wrong practice. So we will talk in detail about that, what are the different components you have to check here when you are writing your literature chapter. And then one important thing which is already discussed by Dildar, that your research questions, because identify a research problem, pose at least 3 research questions. So this is also important, that your research question should not be too many, because I've seen that the student, they have provided like 14 research questions. So it means very, very ambitious research proposal, which is not possible in 3 years or even 5 years. So you have to be very precise, and you have to give at least like 3 to 4 research questions, not many. And then the methodology, which is very important component of your research proposal. And the methodology is the part which should be at least the half of your proposal, because if you are writing a 2000 words proposal, it means that your methodology part will be of 900 words at least. And but if you are writing in detail like 3000 or 3500 words, then you have to provide all the justification with relation to the different steps of your methodology. And then the time frame, this is very, very important, because most of the time students, they miss to provide the time frame, that how they will complete their dissertation, what are the different components when they will conduct their data collections, all kind of things. And here you can see that what is the foolproof research proposal template. So you have to, because it starts with the topic, and here you can see that you have to take the topic which should be very interesting, very attractive, and according to the current affairs. And because nowadays it's COVID, so many of the students, they are working on COVID, and so you see that what is the hot topic which is in discussion nowadays. So then you decide accordingly. And so the large journal topic of wide interest, this is very, very important when you are going to decide about the title of your research. And
Have we lost Rubina?
start writing your proposal. Yeah, so you tell in this paragraph that what is the gap, and how your research is going to fill this gap. So this is the little, the first 2 paragraphs, these are the little introduction of the your research proposal which you are going to do, and you tell about your research questions, your aims, objectives of your research, and then afterward you tell about other different parts, and you give in detail the literature review, methodology, timelines, and sometimes you also give budget. So research title. So what kind of research title it should be? Because most of the time when you decide about the title, it is not, you are not confirmed that this is your title. So it is always tentative. And because the title, it depends on your subjective knowledge, because you have completed your coursework, or if not, you have a lot of ideas, you are seeing a lot of things in your community or in your society, and you are reading newspaper, you are watching TV. So this is your subjective knowledge about the topic which is in your mind, and then you start working on it. And so on the basis of this subjective knowledge, you develop a tentative title of your project, and then afterward you can revise it over the course of your research. And when especially it is revised when you do literature review, and your research title, it should be around 10 words in length. It should not be very short, it should not be too lengthy. So you can decide that it should be at least like it should be around 10 words in length, and it clearly and accurately indicate your area of study or proposed approach or key questions. So because it's always good to provide some, for example, if it's a mixed method research, maybe you can provide this in your title. And sometimes you have very attractive, very interesting question, so you can also put this question in your research title. So you can decide that what could be the title of your research, but while deciding your title, you can think about these things as well. So choose a title that will grab people's attention, especially the people who are working in your field. If, for example, working in the area of public health or in the history or in some other areas, you have to think about those people as well. So if this is of interest for them or not, and then you shape your research to fit. It should be catchy, it should be very informative, it should be interesting. So when you're developing your title, you think about all these things. And so mostly students pick a working title for PhD proposal from an established thesis statement. For example, if already work is done, or you have reviewed the literature, you have read many papers, and then you decide, you take some words from those, and then you decide about the title of your work. So you have to question these like what problems does my dissertation seek to solve. You have to think about it, and then what might the research prove, and to whom is this information most relevant. So you have to keep in mind these three questions when you are deciding for your research title. And then when you start writing your context of your research, a brief overview of general area of study within which your proposed research falls, and summarize the current state of knowledge and recent debate on the topic, because this is the starting point when you are going to start writing your research. You provide some background of your topic. And so the aims and objectives, these are also very, very important. So your aim should be 2 or 3 broad statements. So it should not be like, I have seen like 14, even 22 in one research proposal. I've read 22 objectives. So it should not be too many. It should be like 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 maximum statements that emphasizes what you ultimately want to achieve, complemented by several focused, visible, and measurable objectives. So always see that your objectives are measurable, because sometimes students, they use the terminologies which are not, for example, globalization is too broad. So you have to narrow down your questions. So it should be very precise. The step that you will take to answer each of your research questions, and this involves clearly and briefly outlining how your research addressing a gap in or build upon existing knowledge, because it should not be very like a new thing. It should be based on your previous literature, because you are not building a new, you have to keep on moving the wheel of the research. So you have to take the idea from the previous research, and how your research linked to the department that you are applying to, because sometimes you have to apply to foreign countries, because it's not a practice in Pakistan, because you take admission and then afterward you write. But in many of the students, when they are going to apply to Germany or to US and to other countries, they have to get this information that how your research is linked to the departmental professor's interest. And so this is also keep in mind when you're developing your objectives, and the academic, cultural, political, or social significance of your research question. This is also very, very much important. So these are the points which you have to keep in your mind when you are developing your research question objectives. Research questions already explained by Dr. Dildar. And so research question, this is the central aim and questions that will guide your research. So as I told you about the objectives, so similarly, your questions should not be too much. Yeah, so it should be like if you have 3 research objectives, so it can be like from 1 research objective, there could be 2 questions. Yeah, so it should not be too many. You can decide about it. Might be 3 or 4 or 6 maximum, not many. And similarly, you provide theoretical framework. The major approaches you will take: conceptual, theoretical, empirical, normative, so and rationale, that what kind of theoretical framework you are going to use in your research. And definitely research significance, this is very much important, as I already explained. And these are the different points which already explained by Dr. Dildar, that what kind of your research question should be and how you have to develop your research question. And then the literature review of literature. This is the life cycle of every proposal writing process, because you start, the starting point is literature. Literature review, it connotes the systematic account of the documented literature by qualified and accredited scholars and researchers. So this is very, very important, because most of the time students, they ask question that how much we have to provide great literature, how much we can give indexed literature from the indexed journals. So because this is most commonly asked question. So most of the time we provide literature, we review literature which is authentic. It means it is published in peer-reviewed journals, and it is indexed in some good databases. But sometimes your topic is like this, that research papers are not available, then you can think about it, that you can take help of great literature as well. But try to provide literature which is already researched by some qualified. It means that it is peer reviewed and it is indexed in some good databases like this. So when writing a review of literature, you must show to your examiners and readers that what knowledge has been documented about your problem statement, because this is very common that the student, they start doing the same thing which is already has been done. So that's why it is very important that you very critically review the literature, and your literature review should be very extensive, so you do not leave very important literature which is already or the research which is already done on the topic. So this is that's why it is important that what kind of databases you are using, and how much literature you have read and you have decided to read. So then you can give that what kind of work has already been done on the topic. So your piece of literature must speak loud and clear about your research objectives, questions, and your problems, because sometimes the literature review is going in one direction and the objectives and questions are totally another direction. So it should be, your literature review should be according to the objectives and questions and problems. And even you can formulate your research review of literature. You can structure it. For example, you can structure it according to your objectives. That, for example, if you have 3 objectives, then you can divide your literature review chapter. You can make it more presentation of your literature review chapter can be made more structured. So it can be according to your research questions, your research objectives. So then how many different headings, subheadings you are going to present, then you will be also more familiar with your literature if you are writing just only writing without any headings and subheadings. So your literature review should define and strengthen your research. It should not be a long list of bibliographic references or a summary of rearticulated material, because as I shared earlier, that most of the students, they just provide the abstract. So it should not be. You have to provide it in your own words. You have to synthesize the whole paper which you have read. And so it's a summary of rearticulated material to persuade your reader. So you have to consider the following question while you are writing your literature. Does the literature review discuss about authenticity of this problem statement? Does the literature review significantly support the severity of this problem? And does the research agree or disagree with the existing knowledge, and why? Or final judgment or conclusion, you have to provide it definitely. And this is also very important, that every time when you write your different section of your proposal, you give just little introduction of your topic. For example, when you're writing literature review, first you tell about that how you are going to do it, and tell a little bit about the literature review section, and then divide it or structure it in different sections, and then provide your synthesis of different literature which you have read. So here and you can see that I have provided 2 paragraphs. In the first paragraph, as the state of art is the likely to extend for some pages, it may need to be split into various paragraphs with appropriate titles, and these paragraphs may need to be broken up further into sub-paragraphs. Because, and this is also very common, that when I review the proposals, that sometimes the paragraphs are of like 20 pages. 20 lines, and sometimes the paragraph is just 2 or 3 lines. So when you are developing your paragraphs, it should be consistent. Like if you are developing your paragraph, it should be like 7 to 10 lines, or it should not be too short, it should not be too lengthy. So because you have read a lot of literature, but it is important that how you are going to present this all information. So then you can structure the presentation of your chapter. So, so that's why I'm telling you that if you are writing your paragraphs, that in the first paragraph, how you have to write, in the second paragraph, then you can decide that the example of the second paragraph or the first paragraph of introduction. So, because your different paragraphs should be interconnected. It's like a drama scene, that the one drama scene is, and then the next. And because if you see any drama and there is a disconnection between the first 2 scenes, first and second scene, you just easily you find it. And similar is the case with your literature writing, or the part of different paragraphs of your proposal. Because if these paragraphs are not interconnected, then you can see that the reader can easily find it. So the second paragraph, this is the example of the first subparagraph or the second paragraph of introduction, because this is the continuation of the first paragraph's second paragraph, subparagraph. So to present it, the reason is that your paragraphs should be interconnected, it should be linked, and should not seems that totally different things. The one paragraph is talking about some different thing, and in the second paragraph you are talking about different things. And similarly, it is very important that use different words. For example, you have told about one research, and then you want to tell about the similar research, then you write additionally, moreover, like such kind of different words you use. Or contrarily, if it is different than the previous research, you want to narrate literature which is totally different, then you can use different terminology like this. So because then the connection between the 2 paragraphs, it shows the connection. And methodology, which is very, very important. And here you can see that in different researches, it has been given that if you are writing your research proposal, it should be half of your research proposal, methodology should be. So this is the one question which is most of the time asked during our doctoral synopsis defense by our senior doctor, Dr. Anwar, that what is the difference between methodology and methods? Yeah. So methodology refers to the theoretical analysis of your research, while method refers to the systematic and orderly arrangements and measuring of your research. Because in methodology, you provide all the justification of your different steps which you are going to do. For example, if you have selected some respondents, that why you have selected these respondents, what is the inclusion criteria, what is the exclusion criteria, why it is important to select this age group. Like you provide all the justification. But when you write method, it means you tell about your tool. The method of a research designate what that how you are going to conduct your research. It also leads you on how to advance with your research. Method is just like a tool utilized by a researcher to measure the activities of the study. And different methodologies are used with different studies because it depends that what kind of questions you have, what are the objectives, so you decide accordingly. Because if you have four questions, so might be there are two questions which you can just only do by quantitative methods, might be there are two questions by qualitative. And if you are going to give mixed methods, so you have to tell where you will mix your at the data collection time or the time of analysis. So you have to tell about, you have to be clear that where you will mix your findings. So thus methodology indicates rationale and idealistic postulation of your study, while methods refers to how to do it. For example, if you are doing research on human feeling and you have methodology of triangulation, then you will give that the qualitative, quantitative, descriptive, different kinds of methods you are going to start use, and you will provide research design, you will provide population, sample, instrument, validity, reliability, and result, anticipated outcome. So all these are the different components when you are writing your methodology you have to give. And so these are the, while you are writing your methodology, choose your methodology based on the type of research you are conducting. Yeah, so it's not like this, you decide your methodology first and then you develop your questions. So it depends that what are your questions. So I suggest my students that develop a matrix, so where you can present that this is your objective, and then these are your sub questions or questions, and then you can give what are the respondents and what is the methods you are going to use, what is the tool. So then you will be very much clear that each and every objectives and questions how you are going to achieve in your research. So clear and concise affiliation between your study and your methodology. Methodology should answer your research questions, and it should provide meaningful reason for choosing your methodology. For example, if you are doing qualitative study, why qualitative study? You have, in research methodology, you have to provide justification of each and every step you are going to do in your research. So for example, if you have selected Gujranwala, why Gujranwala? Why not Lahore? Why not some other? And how you have selected? And what are the different characteristics that you are with relation to your research according to your objectives that you have selected Gujranwala? So if you have selected reproductive age women, why reproductive age women? What are the different inclusion criteria for this? Why? What is the exclusion criteria? And this is the commonly common mistake by students, that when they provide inclusion and exclusion criteria, they provide like all the inclusion criteria and then the not word using not and then exclusion criteria. So it's not the right practice, because the exclusion criteria is actually all those inclusion criteria include, but you are not going to include those respondents because of some specific reasons. So in exclusion criteria, you have to give those reasons that because of this, I'm not going to select these respondents. So this should be very much clear in your research. And then divide your method section into research design, population, sample, instrument, validity, data analysis, everything you have to tell about it. So well-developed methodology section is crucial, particularly if you intend to conduct a significant empirical research. So it's very, very important that how you are going to present your methodology section. So because in proposal, you don't need to give result, but you give anticipated outcomes of your result. Your PhD proposal does not need elaborated result. At this point of time, at this stage of PhD proposal writing, you have not proved or disproved your problem statement and research question. At this juncture, you only give hypothesis or anticipate your result. And for example, your topic is about magnesium chloride. Yeah, so you will provide that this experimental research will prove that magnesium chloride regulates the activities of insulin, the hormone that helps control blood glucose level in diabetic patients. Yeah, so what could be the anticipated outcomes? How this results can be used by different policymaker or for future research like this. So conclusion and discussion, writing a conclusion, it is very, very difficult, and mostly we don't write conclusion in proposal, but definitely you have to conclude whole your proposal at the end. And even if when you are going to write your conclusion in your dissertation, then this is a very common mistake that the student, they don't know about the difference of conclusion, because most of the time they write conclusion and summary, write conclusion like a summary. So writing conclusion is one big difference between the introduction and conclusion, that in introduction you pose questions to your audience, while in conclusion you answer those questions, because you have concluded your research, you have done your research, and you are just now telling your reader that what your study has concluded. So you have to remember that it's not a summary of your introduction, even though a paragraph may be the summary of the whole proposal. So in discussion, you interpret your results and bridge the gap that you promised to do when formulating your hypothesis, and you summarize your conclusion and discussion. And you explain it in very simple English, and so they understand now that we did not understand before, so that your reader should know that what you have provided in the introduction and they are very much clear about what you have done. So at the end, the last paragraph, you will conclude your proposal, and you will give the just 4 or 5 lines, and it's here you can also give that PhD proposal should describe a significant contribution to the existing. And so from this whole discussion, what have you learned? This is like what you have to give in the whole proposal. So the bibliography, this is also very, very important, and there is also difference between the bibliography and the references, because in the references you provide, because in some schools they just only ask about the bibliography, but in for example in Punjab University we only give references. So there is difference between bibliography and references. You should know that in the references you provide all the citations which you have provided in your proposal in different sections. Because most of the student, when they show me different sections of the proposal, they don't give citation. And when I ask them that you have to provide references, you have to provide just a citation, and they tell me, oh, we will do it at the end, which is totally wrong practice. When you write your introduction or rationale or significance, or in methodology you are citing someone's work, at the same time you have to start developing your reference section. So, and you have to cite the author and the research in the reference. So, but in bibliography you also provide all the other material which you are going to use in your thesis or in dissertation as well. So at the end, you have to provide timetable, which is very, very, very important, because how you will complete your dissertation. So your timetable should identify how long you will need to complete your each step, and might be bi-weekly or monthly, you can show it, and it helps you to evaluate the feasibility of your project, that if it's going on smoothly or you need more time for some other section of your dissertation. And it shows that you have considered how you will go about putting the PhD proposal into practice, because you will write your dissertation. So this is the way you can present your timetable. So at the end, you have completed your proposal, but this thing, which is very important, because most of the time students, they write their proposal and they just send me, and they don't bother to proofread it, and they don't read it even, and they just send the proposal to the supervisor. So this is very important, that after writing your proposal, You check it for grammatical correctness and errors, and then the best practice is, because writing is a messy process. It's not smooth process. It's very, very messy. You have to, maybe you have to read many times, you have to change it, and then you have to rewrite it. So it takes a lot of reading. So read the proposal over and over to yourself to identify the unnatural wording or the wording which is not scientific, or proof, and proof again. So I tell my students that you have to read it at least 10 times before making it final. So when you are reading because I know it's very difficult to read again and again the same thing, and you can't watch TV drama again and again. It similarly is the case with reading your proposal. So take a break and between, and then correct the things which you have identified, and then again read it. So proofreading session will allow you to, in between, you take rest and then read and then correct it and then again read it. So this is the process of the last step when you finalize your proposal. And at the end, when you finalize it, try to give it to your colleague and tell him or her to read it. And maybe he or she can provide you some more suggestions to improve it. And one thing which, when I was doing my PhD, and it was very common because on the same floor there were people from different other disciplines, for example, from biology, from history, or from some other disciplines, and it was the normal practice to give it to your other discipline person. For example, the person from biology, or the person from chemistry, or the person from history, or some other discipline. And if he or she correctly understands your proposal and the things which you have presented in your research, then it means that your reader will also understand it. But if he or she could not understand, it means there is a big flaws in the proposal, and you have to work it on it. What are the different things which are not understandable? Because when you are writing, you have to write not too long sentences, because sometimes the sentences which I have seen from students, these are like 4 or 5 lines. So they are because you have seen in New York Times, like, they use simple short sentences because these are more reader friendly. So your research proposal should be reader friendly, well structured and clear. Then it will be easily accepted by the your research advisory committee. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Rubina, for a very comprehensive explanation of what research proposal involves. So I hope this all have been really useful for all the participants here. And what I'm going to do is now look at the questions which are in the chat box and try and look at them. Or if you are all happy to ask your questions, what you need to do is just at the bottom of the Zoom thing. I think people are getting used to the Zoom, using Zoom anyway. So where your contact list is, list of the participant, you see quite a lot of icons. And at the same time, if you hover over your name, you will also see, I'm just trying to see where is there is an option of raise your hand. So raise your hand and I should be able to let you ask the questions, if that's okay. Yeah, okay. Fine. So those who have written their question into the comment box, I will also suggest if you could raise your hand and ask your question in person. Would that be okay? If not, then send it in the chat box from now onwards, and I will have a look at it. All right. Okay. So Muhammad Abdullah, I'll just give you the right to unmute yourself, and if you could just ask a question.
Assalamu alaikum. Ma'am, this was a very full and very informative and wonderful session. I want to ask about study rigor. In this search proposal, I write somewhere about study rigor. and I do not know much idea about study rigor. Can you explain study rigor and importance in research proposal?
Okay, that's fine. We'll do that. Okay, I just realized, I mean, I know I've asked you that you all ask questions, but I just wondered if I just have a look at the questions, and if we could go through the in various different elements. I'll have a look at that as well. With regards to study rigor, I will say what I need to, and then perhaps Rubina and Dildar can add to. Rigor basically means that you want to mention how do you think your study would be rigorous, how the in a very simple one, simple terms, how will you ensure that the quality of the study is maintained, and how will you let other people know that it is a rigorous study? Okay, so when it is a quantitative study, so it's in which a survey or anything to do with quantitative data, at that time you use terminology of reliability, validity, content validity, and other aspects around it. When it is qualitative studies, the term usually used is rigor, but both have got the same thing. So it is basically reliability and authenticity and all the other aspects with regards to qualitative study, but actually the term can be applied to both of them. So it is about sharing that how will you make sure the work you've done is quality. So for example, in qualitative study, you say that I will use the transferability, that how my findings of my study are relevant to other settings. So to ensure that, what I will do is I will look into different scenarios and I'll ask people to read through it and tell me, can they relate to the findings? Is that applicable to other setting? So if to make it even more clearer, if you were doing a study in a hospital in Lahore, for example, on infection control, and you've done that, now you want to say that, okay, fine, the terminology and everything that I have used is obviously applicable to the hospital where I have done this study, but can other people in other hospitals use the same thing? So how will you make sure that the terminology that you've used and the aspects that you've used are applicable to other hospitals too? So what you will do is you will give that thing to somebody else to read it, isn't it? And say, well, is that something, do you think you can apply this in your setting? Does that sound understandable? Does that sound useful? And that's how you make sure that your study findings are transferable. Now, this is only one aspect that I'm talking about. Rigor have got quite a few different aspects of under it. So you will have to read through all of them. But in a nutshell, rigor basically means to demonstrate how the findings of your study are relevant. How will you ensure quality of your study? Does that make sense? Okay. Fine. So, Rahmatullah Bhatti, shall I unmute you? And you can ask your question. Yes, you can unmute yourself. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to mute everyone, but that means that you will be able to unmute yourself after this. So if I ask anyone, can you please unmute, just unmute yourself and talk, okay? But rest, okay. Everybody, please keep yourself muted. Yes, Rahmatullah. You should be able to unmute yourself now.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam.
Thank you very much for providing me opportunity. And you are having a very wonderful job for organizing such webinars. I am assistant professor and coordinating MPhil and PhD programs in Allama Iqbal Open University.
Nice.
Thank you very much. There are debates in academia about when to use research question and when hypothesis. I would like our very respected and very experienced professor, Dr. Rubina ji. Sir, would you like to give some differences between when we use research question and when hypothesis in research proposal?
And Rubina, I'm sorry, I said that, once I've given talked more point about rigor, I will ask you and Dildar, and I completely just slipped from my mind. So do you want to, do you have any comments on rigor as well? If you have, please.
Yeah, because in addition to what you have already explained, I think we also use a rigorous study that when you provide each and every step very clearly and justifiably. Because most of the time, our professor, very senior professor, they said, "Oh, your research is not rigorous because one thing which you have explained, it should be very much clear, but other thing that it should be very elaborative because." Many of the time students they just give the methodology in just one or two paragraphs. The things are not clear, it's not rigorous, they don't provide all the steps what they are going to do it. And definitely they have to tell about the how they are going to maintain the quality of data and the findings as well. And when you are going to do it quantitatively, definitely liability you check by using chronobox alpha. And so this is all about rigorous study.
So just
But
a
the
second.
question,
So thank you so much for highlighting, and you will
So,
see these two words being used in the literature and in studies. And as Rabina have said, you will look at there are words which will be about rigor of this study, and you will also hear saying that this study is not rigorous enough. Both are different, and but in
yes,
a way both mean similar.
yes.
Sort of rigor is like how do you
So,
demonstrate rigor of your study, and rigorous is like how rigorous your study, how carefully planned and carefully executed and carefully written your study is, so that when a reader reads through the proposal or a reader reads through your study when you have done it later on, they can actually understand it quite nicely, and if they have to go and do that study they could actually follow your steps. So yes, these two terms are really important. Thank you for that. The question which was posed to you, and I will then go back to Dildar and see if he has to add anything. So apologies, I missed that, sorry.
yeah, I'm sorry I got disconnected due to some technical problems. So, Professor Rubina discussed in very detail about the components of a research proposal. But before going onto developing or writing a research proposal, I think my part was and is pretty much important. You need to develop a good research question, right? And I said, the first thing is that feasibility, we say there are 4 or 5 things: money, time, your commitment, your expertise, your resources, right? The second thing is it interesting or not? Number third is for any PhD, especially for any PhD, and also for master thesis, if you are able to generate a novel research question or an original research question. But for a PhD degree is not awarded to any student if there is no originality. So a novel research question is one which, after literature review, you come to know that this topic has not been researched before, or if even it has been researched before, so you are adding something new in that topic, you are making an innovation in that topic, right? So, final, and is it relevant or not? The fourth component is relevant or not, relevant to your field, relevant to other researcher, relevant to current time, right? Number fifth component was, is it ethical or not? Ethical mean, are you taking into consideration that you are not harming the participants, that you are making sure that you are collecting your data in such a manner that you are not compromising the dignity, the privacy, the informed consent, and all the component of research. So you make sure that you develop a research question which you make sure that you will get ethical approval from the university and that you do not compromise any component of research ethics. So these are, and as far as the rigor was concerned, the rigor, it means, in simple word, it means precision and accuracy. How accurate and how precise are you in your research? Whatever in your proposal writing, are you in thesis writing? You are not talking here and there. So rigorous study is one which is accurate, which is precise, which all the steps of research rigor. So rigor means validity and reliability in quantitative studies, and it means trustworthiness in qualitative studies. So there are further components into that. So when you go on to the methodology, you can further elaborate those points. But a rigorous study is one which is more precise, which is more accurate.
Thank you, Dildar. Rubina, you were Dr. Ahmadullah asked question
So,
about when we have to use research question
I,
and when we
I,
need to use hypothesis. So will
It's
you start answering, and then we will add if there is anything that we would like to add in addition to your answer.
okay. So it's a very normal, common practice that first you have your study objectives. And for example, if you have three objectives, then you provide questions, because most of the time we provide questions, regardless that if our study using quantitative or qualitative methods, because it depends that what kind of question you have. If it's why question, if it how questions, yeah. So then from the why question, you can develop your hypothesis, because sometimes we only use quantitative methods because our questions are like this, that we have to give hypothesis. We can provide hypothesis, and then our research is according to these hypotheses. Research design is according to hypothesis. But sometimes we have questions which can be only achieved by qualitative methods. Yeah, so it means that you can give your questions regardless what kind of design you are using, what kind of methods you are using. So it's very normal practice to use to give your questions, and then afterward, if there is what kind of questions you have, and then you provide your hypothesis. But in Pakistan universities, what I have seen, because I have the experience of working in foreign countries, there what they use in journal questions regardless of the design. But in Pakistan, this is very normal practice that usually your supervisor asks you, "Oh, why you are using questions? You have just moved directly to hypothesis." But I think it's wrong practice. They have to provide questions, and from the questions, you can definitely tell if you want to present your hypothesis, and if there are why questions. But if
Thank you.
it's how, then you can go for qualitative.
Thank you, Rubina.
So it means, like, not all research proposal and not all research not all research proposal will have hypothesis, but every research proposal will have a research question, right? It depends on your design. If your design is quantitative, if it's experimental, or not a cross-sectional study, or if analytical cross-section, so then you may have a hypothesis. But if it's a qualitative study, so you will not have a hypothesis. Hypothesis is based on your question, the type of question that you are posing or that you are asking, right? So my topic, which was how to develop a research question, and I discussed the components of the research question and the criteria. For example, so how will you develop a research question? Initially, you will have a broad topic. For example, I'm just giving you one example of a broad topic. Is, for example, if you are interested in women health. So women health is your research interest, or your broad topic, or your broad area, right? So how do you narrow it down? I said in the beginning that it shall not be too broad, right? So your narrow topic may be, for example, women and cancer, right? Cancer diseases, oncology, or women and cancer. So that is a bit narrow topic. So then it is still broad, right? No, it's not too narrow. So a focus topic would be women smoker and breast cancer. So those women who are smoking and who have breast cancer, right? But still, it is not too specific or too narrow, right? So you need to focus it further. So then you can develop a research question. Now you know that your area is women health, then you are interested in women health and cancer, then you are interested in women smoker and breast cancer. So your final research question may be, for example, is there an association between cigarette smoking and breast cancer risk? So that can be your potential research question, right? So you start from very broad, and then you gradually narrow down your topic and you develop a research question.
Thank you.
One question that student thank you. One question that student typically ask is that from where you get this idea and from where you develop your research question. So you can develop your research question either from your clinical area, or you are from work area, from your observation in the clinical areas, right? So So this is one thing. You can develop your research question from your work experiences, your clinical area, your education, the place where you are working, right? The second is you can also develop your research question after consultation with seniors, with mentors, with your colleagues, right? Your colleagues are your students, scholars, fellows, or anybody else. Your mentors are your senior researchers. You can also develop your research question after consultation with mentors, with seniors, right? So these are the potential avenues from where you can develop your research question.
Thank you, Dildar. I will just summarize that in terms of, and saying to you from my perspectives of being a journal editor and a PhD supervisor and master's supervisor, okay? It is okay to have any study if you have aim of the study and objectives of the study, that's fine. It's a qualitative study, quantitative study, mixed method study, it's okay. Aims and objectives. It's okay to have aims and research question. Qualitative study, quantitative study, mixed method study. Okay. Hypothesis. It's okay to have aims and hypothesis only. Okay. But basically, hypotheses are only used in quantitative studies. So you're basically better off using questions or objectives, even in quantitative studies. When we are teaching about research question, or when we are telling about, how do you develop research question, as Dildar has described, understanding about hypotheses help people understand what sort of association are you looking for, what sort of thing are you looking for, which will then allow them to use and understand which statistical methods they are going to use to look at the differences later on in method section. But as far as writing a research proposal is concerned, you don't need to have, it is really annoying when I see stuff and, in journal articles, you get straight rejection because mostly it looks like as if you don't understand. I think I'm probably exaggerating it, but if you have got aims and objectives and research question and hypothesis, and I've seen papers with all four things in there, or you have got aims and research question and hypothesis, so that's not the right practice. So have aims and objectives, or aims and research question, or aims and hypothesis, one or the other. You don't need to have all three of them in everything. And actually, if you examine, you will see that objectives, research questions, and hypotheses are actually the same thing. Slight wording is different. Try and examine, and one of the exercises which I make my students do is ask them to choose one research question and translate that into hypothesis and translate that into objectives. Okay. And then you understand that's actually the main thing, but what you need to do is it's written differently and it's stated differently. So I hope that answers your question, Rehmat. Thank you. Another question that people have asked about, and this is another very common question that we get asked quite a lot of time, is about theoretical framework. What is a theoretical framework? And Rubina has explained that quite nicely. In terms of theoretical framework, it is something which people find it difficult to understand, but if I could explain that in a very, very plain, simple words, it is something which gives a structure to your research. So for example, if you wanted to make a round cake, yeah, if you're baking and if you wanted to make a round cake, what will you do? You will have a round tray, na? Yeah, in which you will put your batter in and bake it. So what you will get out is a round tray. Can you make a round cake in any other way? Is there any other way of making a round thing without using a round utensil or without using a round vessel or something like that? There is no way of doing it. So similar way, theoretical framework gives you that structure which shapes your study, and it gives you boundaries under which you are looking at this stuff. So if I take the example of domestic abuse, and I say the domestic abuse is caused by, there are many different factors, and I will use ecological framework as my framework or as my theoretical framework, then I need to look at the ecological frameworks talking about personal, individual level, community level, some other levels, 3 or 4 levels. right? So it just makes me think through the things and makes me think how my research study, what are the individual factors, what are the community factors, what is something else, what is something else, and it will help me stay in that boundary to be able to present what my study was. Does that make sense? So that is the reason we use a theoretical framework. You don't always have to have a it may, well, what I'm trying to say is you may not be able to find a theoretical framework which fits your study, or there may not always be theoretical framework available for the study that you want to do. In that case, sometimes what you can do is you can also develop your own theoretical framework coming from the literature that you have reviewed in your proposal. Okay, so if your literature review is comprehensive enough, you can say, well, from the literature there are these factors, and I'm going to develop this, use this as a theoretical framework for my study. So for instance, I looked at predictors of academic performance in students. So what I did, I looked at the literature talked about age, gender, rural urban status, previous academic performance, things like that. There was no other theoretical framework which I could find. So what I did, I used these factors and I said these are the factors which I'm going to use a theoretical framework which will include age, gender, previous academic performance, this, that, and all the rest of the stuff, and demonstrate how that relates to my study. Okay, so I hope that helps you. I will invite Rubina and Dildar to add anything extra onto it, but if there is nothing extra, then we can go to the next question. But I
Only
hope
one thing.
I
So I
hope
want
this question, just a second. I hope this question is clear. This is a very common question that we face all the time. And this is a very common misconception that all students struggle with. But I think the analogy that if you understand that it is about shape, it is about boundary, it is about giving your, having that thing in which you work, that's what it is. And as long as you've identified, it's like, as I say, round cake, you can't make a cake round without using a round vessel. Sorry, Rubina, go on.
Yeah, so I just want to, because what you have explained, it's very clear. But I want to add one thing that it's always good to provide a schematic diagram of your theoretical framework, because it shows the relationship of your different variables and then the intermediate variables and then the outcome. So because schematic presentation make it more clear to you as well as to reader, that what you are, what kind of variables you are going to use and how it is related to your research outcome. And because this thing I have explained to my student, and sometimes the student, they just only make the schematic diagram and nothing else, which is not always, it's not correct. Because when you are providing schematic diagram, then you have to tell that from where all these variables are coming, and on the basis of your review of literature and how these are related. Yeah, it means that you have to explain your theoretical framework as well. And because always when we write dissertation, we always follow a sequence. Why it is we have to follow the sequence? Because when you provide in the first chapter, when you provide introduction and relevance and everything and the objectives, and the second chapter when you're writing your literature reviews, so from the literature review is coming your theoretical framework. And so that's why you have to provide your theoretical framework after the literature review chapter. And then in the theoretical framework, you are clear about the operationalization of your variables. Yeah, so you are just sometimes you also explain conceptualization and operationalization of your variables in this chapter as well. And then you tell about the methodology afterward, okay, because you provide the operationalization. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Dildar, do you have to add anything?
So I will just add to Dr. Rubin and Dr. Parveen's discussion about the theoretical framework. I'll just give you one example. For example, if you are conducting a study on, for example, migration or job satisfaction, so the first thing that may come to your mind is what are the components, or why, for example, if you are talking about migration, why do people migrate to foreign countries, or why do people switch off their jobs? So, understanding the theory of motivation, one thing is, for example, Maslow's hierarchy of needs is a theory of human motivation, right? And it focuses on, for example, the first component is your physiological needs, then love and belonging, and then you go on, self-actualization and self-esteem and self-actualization. So these are the components Why people migrate? Because if their physiological needs are not met, right? Why do people switch their job? Because their physiological needs are motivation or migration. But why this phenomena occur? Definitely there is a theoretical framework, which I'm just giving you one example of Maslow's hierarchy of need, because people want to, every human want to meet their physiological needs, and maybe if their salary is not good enough, so they tend to go to any foreign country, or they tend to switch their jobs, right? So this is the first thing. So what I'm saying here is, if there is some kind of theoretical framework in the area or in the topic that you are interested in, or that you are intending to study, you must refer to that theoretical framework. Because if at the end you conduct a study that has already been conducted at your university, or you're not referring to it, so it's something in totally in vacuum. It is not mandatory that each and every research proposal or research will have a theoretical framework, but if there is one, you must refer to it, you must study it, and you must utilize
It is a
it
good
in
practice.
some sense. Yeah.
Yeah, it is a good practice because
Yeah.
when
So
you
thank
conduct
you.
research, it's very easy to kind of expend it without knowing it. So as I say, I mean, I don't think I could explain it in any simpler form. That if you want to make a round cake, you have to use something round, so that this gives you boundary to be able to come up with something. And I think the reason I'm spending so much time on this question is that many people struggle with this, and it's very difficult to explain, and it's very difficult to understand. And one of the things which you might useful when you are trying to develop a theoretical framework, just sit down in one corner and leave everything else. Stop reading, stop studying, stop looking at everything else. You've done all that previously. Just sit down and say, what is happening here? Why do people do this? So we gave you example of predictors of academic performance. We gave you example of migration. We gave you example of domestic abuse and something else. And if you actually look at it, these are not outsider factors. When you just sit down and think, you will be able to come up with these factors, aren't you? So just sit down, and Rubina talked about schematic, diagrammatic presentation of this. Just sit down with pen and paper, with pencil and paper, just draw it and see how one thing relates to the other, how one thing relates to each other thing. And can you make a picture? Can you explain it? And that's what is going to help you. Okay, let's move on. Let's move on to the next question. Uh, Zainab, you have your hand raised, so I will allow you to ask question, and then I will look at some other questions later on. Can you unmute yourself? Zainab?
Hello.
Ji.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, yeah.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Ji, yes, we can.
Thank you very much for giving me opportunity. It's very informative session. Lots of queries I answered, like I got the answer. But my question already I mentioned, it is sometime mostly we have confusion, like what comes first, research design or research methodology? What would be the base? Okay,
Okay, fine.
so this is my question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so this is another very common question, very common issue that many students face. And Rubina has explained it quite nicely. I will just make it a little bit more easier for you. And that is, just a sec. Methodology is about why do you want to do something, and methods is about how are you going to do it. So methodology, if you look at it, if you look at any qualitative studies especially, you will see there is a discussion about paradigms, that the how do we understand knowledge. You will see information about epistemology, ontology. That's a quite a big topic, so I don't think we can cover here today. But what methodology it tells the team or the research team is that why you're doing it, what you're doing it. What do you think is knowledge? What do you think? Are you somebody who think that there's only white and black, or there's only yes and no answers? Yeah, there's only one truth. There is either truth or lie, or is there anything in between? Are you somebody who think there's white and black and gray as well? So things are not always white and black, but there could be something else. So it is more about knowing yourself and explaining your choice of methodology that you're going to choose later on, and why you have chosen that, why you have chosen grounded theory, or why you have chosen a qualitative approach, and why you have chosen a quantitative approach, or XYZ anything. That's methodology. When it comes to methods, it is about what methods are you going to use to conduct your study. It is about how are you going to collect your sample, who is your population, how will you collect data, how will you analyze data. And both of these are related, because you will explain that, I think qualitative methods, because I think there is more than one reality, there's more than one thing that we need to know. There's not everything is right and wrong. People's experiences make their own realities. Therefore, I think I'm going to use qualitative approach, and therefore your data collection will involve observation or qualitative interviews or something else like that. Okay. Whereas if you think that, you can put things into boxes, there are ways of questionnaire that you could use. So then you are going to use quantitative methodology. So quantitative method, to answer that question. So basically, one is the reason of why you are using the methods that you're using, and the other one is what you are using. You will still have to give justifications of what you're using, what's the impact of that, and why is that the appropriate method. But still, methodology is more about you, more about the choices of major methods, and methods is more about explaining what you're going to use. So is there anything else to add, Rubina or Dildar?
So
I
if
think
if
you
I
have
may,
very nicely
so
cleared.
if I may add to, if I may add to this question, what Zainab asked and what Dr. Parveen just shared is that Zainab was asking like, what comes first, research design or research methodology, right? So Zainab, and I'll just add to Dr. Parveen's discussion that methodology is broad, right? Methodology includes your research design, your sampling strategy, your the way of data collection, your analysis, right? So methodology, a research method which is broad. It includes your research design as well. So research design is more specific. It may be either quantitative, qualitative, and in quantitative, you may further choose the type of research design that you want to use. So I will just summarize it that the research design is a component of research technique. Your sampling, your sample technique, your sample size, your data analysis technique, your data collection techniques.
Thank you. Rubina?
So simple answer to Zainab's question, that first you can decide about research design. Yeah, very simple, because you can decide that, oh, you are going to, according to your research question, you are going to do qualitative method or quantitative method. And in quantitative method, what kind of design you are going to use? Either you are going to use cross-sectional or longitudinal design, or what kind of design you are going to use. Yeah. So definitely you will decide about your design first. And then you will, in the methodology, you will explain each and every step and all the justification. When you are providing, then it is methodology. And the methods, when you are just only giving what kind of methods you are using, like the design is part of method, you can say. So I think it's clear to you.
Thank you, Rubina. I will take one question on the chat box, and then Tasneem, you will be the next one, and I'll let you ask your question. So one question on the chat box is, how current literature is required if after having literature review, the literature saturated, then it is stopped. Okay, listen, one of the things which I would like all of you to understand and develop, that it is important to think through things, that why you are doing what you're doing. Okay, anything, when you're writing something, when you are talking about research question, you need to know, why am I writing research question, why am I writing an aim, what is the need of doing it. Problem with most of the students, and especially in our part of the world, is that we don't think, and we don't have confidence on our thinking. Okay, so first of all, you need to understand this. Just sit down and think, okay, fine, I have the confidence and I can think of things. So why are we doing literature review? Literature review, we do it so that we can see what is available on the particular topic that we are trying to study, and what have other people found. Is it useful to do is it useful to do another study on this topic, or what we know, we already know about it, and therefore there's no need to do anything else? Are there any more gaps that we can fill in, or are there any other direction that we can go in? So that's the sort of stuff, these are the questions that we ask ourselves, and that's the reason we do literature review. Okay, how far and how current you go, well, usually it all depends on the topic. So if your topic is something which is very, very current and people have been talking about it and doing stuff very frequently, then you don't need to go and get literature from 1960s or 1950s or beyond that. But if it is a topic in which there is not a lot of literature available, then you might have to go it. The other thing is that you may have to look at the classic literature. So for example, if your research question is how somebody has developed a light bulb, you will have to look at Edison and how he has developed the light bulb and what happened at that time. Okay, so or the law of gravity, you will have to go back and see what the, so it is about relevance. How far can you go back? We usually normally suggest 10 to 15 years, 10 years at least, and make sure that whatever current information that you find out, you include all of that as much as possible. And that's where what Rubina mentioned earlier on, Dilar have mentioned, as a systematic approach helps you, where that you're not cherry picking, you're not picking and describing, putting things in that you like, but you are giving a whole flavor of that. In past 10 years, 100 studies have been published on this topic. There are 50 studies which are relevant to the topic that I'm looking for. They have looked at X, Y, and Z, and none of these studies look at this aspect, which I think is really important to study and therefore to do it. Because otherwise, if someone has done already one thing, why the hell do you need to do it again? So these are the questions that you need to ask yourself. And also, while I'm talking about literature review, also make sure that as a supervisor or as a reader or as a somebody who is reading your work, a journal article or what, I don't need to read a summary of the literature review from another study. They XYZ did this study and they had this many participants, blah blah blah. If I have to read that, I will go back to that article and read it. Okay, what I would like to read from your point of view is that what did you think that study contributed? What do you think were the strengths and weaknesses of that study from your perspective? Okay, that's what we are looking for. So make sure that you have incorporated, and as incorporated in your literature review. And as far the question is concerned, it is about past 10 years at least, and it also depends on the topic. Does that answer your question?
So yeah, so if I can add to this question,
Yes,
Dr. Parveen, so you should be critical enough in your literature review, right? You shall not be purely descriptive or not just telling what other people have done. You shall be telling, like, what were the flaws or what were the strengths of those studies that you have reviewed. So you should be critical enough. The second point which Dr. Parveen mentioned, and which I also think is very important, is, for example, if there is any landmark study, any study, like just Dr. Parveen told, like if you are studying physics, like so the Newton law of gravity is very important. It's a breakthrough study, it's a landmark study. If you are studying energy, so then, like Einstein's study is a landmark or a breakthrough study, so you definitely refer to it. So there is no clear cut, like ideally, if the topic is saturated, or there are so many studies, as Dr. Parveen told, like 5 years, 10 years, 15 years is quite reasonable time. But like if there's not enough has been studied on that topic, so then you may go refer to the previous studies of like 30 years or 40 years back. But any classical or any landmark study is very important, that you must refer to it, and you definitely have to understand it,
thank you,
to
Dila.
explore
Thank
further
you.
that area.
Sure. It is not about that, well, I've taken two studies from 2019, so now when I'm going to go and, find another study for 2018. No, no, no. It's not like that. If 2019, there were 10 studies published and they were relevant to your work, you will include those 10 studies. And if you've said that I'm going to look at studies between 2010 and 20, then you will have to include studies which were published in 2000. I think it depends on how much literature is available, and what your research question is and how far do you want to go back. If there's a lot of literature available, then you can have a smaller time window. Another technique which I usually tell my student is that when you starting literature review, try and look at, what you need to do is try and look at systematic reviews or literature reviews done on that topic, a recent one. So read that first, because what that does is that allows you to see what is already written by somebody who has already done the work that you are going to do. They have done the literature review, they've published something. So you read their work and see what they think. And that will also allow you to understand the gaps in the study, and you can take it further. Tasneem, do you want to ask questions? We've got next 15 minutes. I would like to finish in next 15 minutes, if that's okay. Let's do that quickly.
Good afternoon, Dr. Parveen. It's a very nice session. My question is about conclusion and summary. What is the difference between conclusion and summary? Because Dr. Parveen, Dr. Robina already, hello?
Gigi, we're listening.
Dr. Robina already told me about this, that there is a big difference between summary and conclusion. So when we are writing the conclusion, we should not add is just like a summary. So kindly elaborate the difference.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to take up that question, Dildar? Hello?
Yes. So I'll just tell you that summary is more a bit descriptive, right? So what you have already mentioned, am I audible? Yeah. So summary is more descriptive as compared to conclusion. Conclusion is more critical as compared to summary. In summary, you are just referring that in this chapter or in this section, I have what previously stated, what you have mentioned in detail. So you just summarize it or you just describe it. But a conclusion, you are a bit more critical. You are inferring or you are drawing a conclusions, and you are adding your thought into that. So I would say that conclusion is more important than summary, but it depends like what you are doing. Summary is more descriptive, conclusion is more critical. You are inferring something from the previously mentioned information. Dr. Parveen, your mic is muted. Can you put it on? Yes, please.
Sorry. And what I was saying is conclusion usually is shorter. Summary, you summarize the point that are already been discussed earlier on, even in bullet points. So, you know, sometimes using the same language, sometimes using slightly different language. But conclusion is like, what do you make out of it and close it down? So you don't necessarily need any new information. Well, you don't include any new information in summary as well. But and then it also depends on what kind of summary are you talking about. Like summaries are used in left, right, and center. They're used as an alternative of abstract as well. So you will see abstract, you will have research summaries and things like that. So we will try and cover that topic some other time as well, if that's okay. Okay, so thank you. The next question is, I will take it from the chat, and then I will have, I think Ghulam Server, sorry if I missed someone. I think Ghulam Server, I'll let you ask that question afterwards, okay. I have so the question is, what is the difference between statement of research and research question? Is it necessary to write both in proposal or not? Okay, statement of research and research question. Well, yes, research question you're definitely going to write. Statement of research, you will also learn about, people would use the terminology of a problem statement or what. So it is basically stating what is the issue. So if you were a doctor, if you were a nurse, or if you were a healthcare professional and somebody comes to you and say, well, I've got headache, I've got abdominal pain, I've got this, I've got that. So that is your problem statement, that this is what is happening. I mean, I know it's not really very correct example, but statement or the research question is your diagnosis. What do you make out of it at the end? So statement of research or problem statement tells the people what is the problem, what is happening, and why do you need to study this, whereas the research question concludes that statements of a problem statement and say, well, this is exactly the problem, and therefore we want to explore this particular research question. Okay, so I hope that answers your question. Ghulam Sarwar, if you want to ask a question, we'll just take it on from there. Sorry, I'm just trying to make it a bit quick, so that's why I'm not asking Dildar to comment on that. We'll take a question by turn. So Ghulam Sarwar, do you want to ask?
Thank you very much, madam. Thank you very much, madam.
You're welcome.
My question is very basic in nature. I am a research scholar of PhD at Allama Iqbal Open University, and at the thesis, I am going to have a topic. My question is that, which things we can keep in mind while selecting an idea, an appropriate touchy idea regarding topic, while having different topics in our mind. We are working on 5 or 6 and going to think that this is the correct, and we are informed that, that's not better. You have to go to another. That's difficult one. Then please guide me that which steps can be taken to reach at one touchy topic. Thank you very much.
Dildar, I'll let you answer this question and I'll add something up.
So yeah. So it's pretty much the question that I discussed before. Like, so there are 5, 6 criteria. First thing is, is it innovative or not? Is it feasible or not? Is it acceptable or not? Is it ethically sound or not? So what, there is a rubric. I'll just show you. This is a rubric. In this rubric, I can just show you relevance has three. For example, there are 6 criteria, like, relevance, innovation, feasibility, acceptability, and cost effectiveness and ethical. So you can just rate it from a scale of 1 to 3. You just, in relevance, you can just mention it according to your own judgment. You just, would you like to give it 3 score or 1 score, right? So your 3 score is maximum score. If you think this is
Okay.
relevant, you just give it 3 score, right? Then if you think there is nobody else has researched this topic or this question, so it is highly innovative, you just give it 3 score, right? If you are adding something into previous research, so your innovation score may be 2, so you just give it a score of 2. The third thing, is it feasible or not? If you have enough money, if you have enough time, if you have enough expertise, if the subjects are available, so it's highly feasible. In feasibility, you give it a score of, from 1 to 3, you give it a score of 3. So is it acceptable, socially acceptable, or politically acceptable research question? Is it cost effective? Do you have enough money? Is it ethical? If it is highly ethical, you're not harming the participants, you are not doing something ethically wrong, you will get ethical approval. So you just give it a score of 1 to 3. So your minimum score, like, if you just quantify this, you may give a score from 6 to 18. 6 is, if you are using, you may use 6 or 7 parameters of assessing the research question. So if you get a score of 15 to 17, 18, so it means something you are interested in, it is feasible, you are adding some innovation or something. So that is how you approach. You just list your 5, 6 questions and you evaluate it according to some rubric or some criteria. If you get
Thank
a
you.
high,
Thank you
And
very
yeah.
much.
I will just also add one thing which would help you. I mean, Dildar has already mentioned earlier on where, how do you develop your research question? How do you develop your things? Talking to mentors, talking to other people, reading something, thinking about it would help you understand which ones are better. In one of my courses, I asked my students to identify at least 5 topics or 5 questions that they would like to use. Then I asked them, okay, fine, now look at these 5 and see which one can you actually do and which one you can't. So all these criteria that Dildar has mentioned in terms of, can you actually do that? Is that ethical? Is that useful? Is that relevant? Do you have the skills? I like to see how NASA's kind of spaceship work, but do I have the ability to do that? No, I don't. I'm not that kind of a person. I want to develop a nuclear bomb, but can I do that? I don't know how to. So you need to look at your abilities, you need to look at your discipline, you need to look at relevance, you need to look at why you need to do it, and all those things will allow you to come up to a question that you need to, that would be specific enough, and that would be a useful thing to be done as well. Another important aspect that you need to understand is sometimes, well, most of the time, students from Pakistan especially, and other developing countries, or other places as well, they would come and say, well, I'm interested in this question because this is not done, and that's why I'm interested, and that's why I need to do it. What you need to understand, as a master's student, you're spending at least 1 year of your time or 2 years of your time doing that study. As a PhD student, you might be spending 3 or 4 years of your time, not only your time, but your supervisors, the university,
Yes.
the library, many other places. You might not think these are relevant, but actually, these are all used when you're doing your study. So the question you need to ask is that are you only your interest in the topic is not enough. What you spend your time in something has to be good enough for and contribution to the body of knowledge. It should tell us something new or something useful at the end. It should make society better. It should make work practices better or something of that. So you need to ask these questions to yourself and change it accordingly. So if your supervisor, other people are telling you in some ways, They're good because they're asking you questions, and you are the one who need to think and ask yourself these things. Do not take the point then we said the talk to mentors as it's I get loads of requests, and I'm sure Dildar and other people and Dr. Ahmadullah is there, we get where we get people who say, ma'am, I want to do masters or I want to do PhD, and you say, well, excellent, do it. Can you tell me a research topic or can you tell me a research question? Well, no, I can't, because the reason being, it is your research. You need to find a topic that is of interest to you. You need to invest into it to develop that. So when we are saying talk to mentors, supervisors, colleagues, that's not that, everybody tells you something, even if they say that's a rubbish topic, it's fine, because somebody is telling you now it's a rubbish topic. 2 years down the line, you've done something, and it may be that you've presented in a way that makes them think it's a rubbish. So you have to think of, okay, fine, what did I do wrong here? Can I say it something differently? Can I add something else? So take it as a developmental opportunity and take that forward. Okay, so I'll take a next question now.
So if I can just, sorry just to interrupt you. I think the last point that Dr. Parveer has just mentioned is that this sounds like, how do I put it? Like, this sounds perhaps the most stupid thing that a student asks you that can you give me a research question or can you give me a research topic? The main purpose of a PhD or any master project or research is that you develop your own independent thinking. And developing a research question is a part of that. You must use your critical faculties, your thinking to develop a research question from whatever resources that we discussed earlier. But it doesn't good if a student asks supervisor, give me a research topic, a research question. You must develop 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 ideas, and then you work on it. You come to a research question, but never make this mistake. It does not sound professional. It does not sound good.
We are more than happy to help you if you come up with
definitely
ideas and say, these are my ideas. Can you please help us make them better? We are more than happy to do that. Okay, but do not ask because they cannot do it. Come up with ideas, come up with, I'm interested in this. This is the research. They will tell you, well, there's already a lot of research on this. Probably it's not good enough. Think of something else. They will look at different questions, will help you make something better. But this question that please do that for me. It is like, those who were studying as children. So I don't know if you have done that. Can you please tell me first word and then I'll be able to write my essay afterwards. But tell me the first word and I don't remember that. It is a little bit like that. Okay, so I'm just conscious of the time, so just wrapping it up quickly. There was in any topic, no studies being done in different countries, but in our country, this was not studied. Again, the same principle applies. Is that going to add to the body of knowledge? Okay, if other countries have conducted this study and they have already come up to a conclusion, the world is round, the earth is round, unless you're proposing that earth is not round and earth is rectangular, is there any point doing it? So if you are going to prove that earth is not round, then by all means go and do it. But if you're going to say, well, in 10 countries, they have already proven that earth is round, but no one from my country has done this study. So now I would like to do it and say that if earth is round or not, it's not good use of your time, your supervisor's time, your institution's time, anybody's time. Okay.
So I'll just add one point into this.
Okay, fine. Yeah.
I'll just add one point into this. It's like what Dr. Parveen told is like, it also depends on if it's a universal phenomena or not. But like, if you got something contextual, maybe if your design is qualitative or if it's a cross-sectional study, so there is some value of context in those kind of designs or in those kind of methods. So maybe then you can use that. In my country, it was not done, and this particular area it was not done. But if it's a universal or something like that, then definitely you think about it, and it doesn't make any sense that you say that this was not done in my study. But if it's contextual, then you may use it, like, but it's not, ideally it shall not be like this.
Yeah, it's something like, for example, hand washing, is that going to kill bacteria? We have not done this in our country, so shall we do that? No,
not at all.
Everybody has done that. How do we develop critical thinking skills? That's another topic that we get. Every other person wants to look at critical thinking skills. Well, it's already proven. People have written loads about it. What is it that you're going to spend your time on and write about that. So, try and think of, that's why I'm suggesting read a literature review, recent ones, see what they have written, think about why is it relevant or not relevant, and come up with a question. So two more questions and then we will conclude. Mumtaz Hussain, Rahmatullah, you asked me like if the questions was covered. I think they were covered, but we'll recap it and I'll send you the link of the recording as well so you can have a look. Mumtaz Hussain, can you ask your question, please? Please try not to ask a question which has already been asked.
Thank you, ma'am, so much providing us valuable session. My question is that if one validated tool or model used in PhD research and diabetes, but I want to use such model in TB patients, can I do it in PhD or not?
Okay. Again, if the model, if the questionnaire is exploring the aspects that you want to explore, you can do it. But if that thing was talking about the HB1AC or glycemic index or something like that, you know how that works, and you say, well, I'm going to use it in tuberculosis, that may not work. If it was something to look at, for example, medication adherence in the diabetic patients, you might be able to change it slightly and adapt it and use in TB patients, that may not work. So it depends on the topic and on the relevance of the questions that you are using and developing your question. So it all is very individual, but usually you can, as long as it is relevant. Like you need to have the difference between apple and oranges. So you can't call an apple an orange if it's not. So that's the sort of thing that you need to think. But otherwise, the same principle applies. And secondly, if there are, you've asked this question, so I will take up this opportunity to say that if there are valid and reliable tool available on the topic that you're studying, you better use them. There is no need to create another tool for yourself. There's no need to reinvent the wheel unless you have got a very strong reason for doing it. You may want to adopt, it's used slightly, but unless there is a very strong reason, you shouldn't really be using developing another similar tool with a similar sort of questions. I hope that answers your question. Shehzad, you have a question.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Praveen, and good evening, everyone. I hope so this would not be a silly question. My question is concerning about the literature review section, as Professor Robina was mentioning, and she mentioned like the valid literature, we need to cite the valid literature in literature review section. So the literature would be valid if it is published in index journal and peer reviewed as well. So in Pakistan's context, if I can recall, like there are so many journals that are peer reviewed, but they are not indexed in reputable databases like PubMed and Sinhal and other databases as well. So would the literature be valid if it is peer reviewed but not present in the indexed databases? This is my question.
Do you want to take that one, Dildar?
Yeah. So what I can say about this is like, peer review process is a very rigorous process. Like, unfortunately, like we got some Pakistani journal which are index journals and indexed by PubMed or Scopus or other databases. But like, peer review process is very important. If the journal is indexed, so it means the peer review process is rigorous, it is systematic. Like, but some of the journals, they do not have a proper peer review process. So articles in those journals may not be highly authentic or like, as compared to those journals which are indexed or which have some databases backup. So this is what I can say. But literature review also, you are talking about journals, there is also some gray literature, like any literature from WHO or any whatever, like, so it is also a sound literature, but it is a gray literature. It is not published in journals, but you can use that as well.
Thank you. My advice would be that if you want to use the literature, because quite a lot of time that literature provides you with quite contextual information, the only problem is that sometimes these are peer-reviewed journals, but why we say and use index articles published in index journal, the reason being the quality and authenticity. They have to go through a very rigorous process, not only the article themselves, but the journal and everything else. So you to a certain extent, you can rely on what's being published there. When that's not available, it's difficult. But as Dildar have said, my advice would be the same, that you can use it, but as long as you have transparently explained why you have used what you have used, and you are able to identify strengths and weaknesses at the end, that's fine. If you are able to at the end look at that, these are the flaws, or these are the problems into it, um, I think that's okay. That's not a problem. There is a large body of counterfeit journals at the moment, which are very, very difficult to identify. Problem with them is that they are called peer review journals, but usually they are not peer reviewed. And it may be that in next 10-15 years time, who knows, they will become get into the publishing industries and all that. But the problem usually is that, can you actually rely on the findings which they are suggesting? And so you have to be aware of that. And as long as you acknowledge, and as long as you mention at the end, I don't see why you can't use it, because as the last said, you use great literature, you can use reports, you can use newspapers, so I wouldn't see them any different in any other way. I hope that answers your question. Siddiqur Rahman, I'm happy to take your question, please.
Okay, Dr. Parvin and all other discussants are here. So I'm really happy to join here and have the opportunity to have some knowledge from you, like the learned person. So I have specifically two questions, or maybe the two questions can be melted in one question. So as an editor or as an researcher, highly experienced researcher, how do you evaluate the societal impact of our research? Like I'm a PhD student. Sometimes I ask myself, really my research is impacting the society? So this is the first question. And another question is I found many articles, they just put the knowledge gap, something like that. Suppose one of my research is climate change, and the disease occurs. So yes,
Okay.
so I found many articles, they just put like the data as the rationale of my study. You got my point?
Yes, I think what you're asking is that, largely what is happening in research, that you are asked to write what would be the impact of your study. What do you think is going to be the impact and social impact, and how can you actually measure it? Is that what you were trying to say?
Did
Okay,
you hear me, Doctor?
now, yes, yeah. Is that what you were trying to say?
I try to say, as an editor,
Mm.
how do you evaluate the research based on the societal impact?
Okay.
What are the, yeah.
Okay, so what we do is, in terms of, it is up to the author how they describe it. So how they explain it, that in terms of, these are three different things. As an editor, when it comes to a journal, so basically what you do is, you asked authors to make statement as to how they, and you see how convincing those statements are, and then it goes through the process of peer reviews and other people reading through it and giving examples and looking at it, and that's and peer review process tells you that, is that believable, is that not believable, is that actually happening or not. So that's one thing, how you determine. But when it comes to doing it in your research proposal as a master's, as a PhD student, or as a researcher, saying that I think majority, we still could do quite a lot in terms of understanding and in terms of thinking, okay, fine, we are doing this research, but how can this research make a contribution at societal level, and what sort of practical steps can we use to do it? One way is to talk about your research results to people who do not know. So for example, am I, through these webinars, do you think I am making a societal impact in changing the knowledge about research, about in developing countries? So that probably you can answer that question, that I've attained that knowledge, but am I doing this or not? So you will be able to understand from that perspective. I do lots of stuff on domestic abuse. So in order to make it a practical tool, what I have done is I've made free courses available, or I've got, or sometimes these are charged by Future Learn and other places, depending on what their mechanism is. But what it is doing at today, if I have got 10,000 students on that course in past 10 months, so which means that it probably is doing some kind of societal impact or doing something like that. So thinking about those kind of strategies through which you can disseminate knowledge and engage with people about those concepts is one strategy. I think you just have to think critically and and see how you can impart that knowledge that you have got to other people. I hope that answer your questions. Dildar, if you have to add anything, please do, and then we will close the session.
So let me just add into this point is that, like, for example, one of the questions that I shared were, is there any association right? So we can potentially see from this research question, like, for example, if you are able to find out association between breast cancer and smoking, so definitely then you suggest or you recommend to policymakers that there shall be some strategy, like people who are smoking may develop breast cancer. So you create awareness, there is a societal impact. But one misconception that usually the beginning of PhD is, like, most people think they're going to change the world. It is not going to happen like this. There are implications, there is societal impact that you are recommending, but not directly. You just start and you do PhD, you change the world. It doesn't happen like that. There are potential implications of every research. You learn something new, you just make some recommendation, you just make implication, you create awareness.
Yeah, thank you. So as long as, this is an important point, that anyone who wants to do a master's or PhD, they want to change the world. And sometimes when supervisors tell them that you have to scope yourself and this is unachievable, so try and kind of make it small, they don't like it. Well, teaching somebody, as they say, if you change one person, you've achieved a lot. Okay, so start with smaller things, that what you're doing, how can it change one person, two people, small community or whatever, and then hopefully one day you will be able to change the world. But it has to be a slow process. So anyway, thank you so much. I think we can keep going on with that, but I'm conscious that it is taking long and people have other things to do. So I would like to close this session. I hope it was useful. If there are any questions which have not been answered, you can put that on the WhatsApp group, or you can email me and I'll try and answer that question in that way. And I hope you found that useful. Any feedback, that will also be really great. So thank you for joining us. If you don't mind, if you are happy to put up your cameras on, we can take a photograph and then we can leave. So will everybody be able to open their cameras in a gallery view? Okay, so are others don't want to open their cameras, or shall I wait for them? Okay, thank you everyone, and just have a look at it and I will do that. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much, Dr. Dildar and Professor Rubina. She has to leave a little bit earlier. So thank you everybody for your contribution. And I hope this session was helpful and you have learned something out of it. Thank you for being with us. Any suggestions, any comments, please do email me or put it on the WhatsApp group, research group that we have, and we can just take it on from there. Okay, Allah Hafiz. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Berlin. Thank you.